First of all, I'd like to thank Dr. Johnson for coming out to join us this afternoon, and also for supporting all of us in this wonderful professional development opportunity with our NAU Tri-C cohort. So thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Johnson comes to us today with 40 years of higher education experience.
Put all my business in this.
25 of those years, so a quarter century, he has spent in the role of a community college president. Dr. Johnson began his career in the four-year sector, and his shift to community college can be described as serendipitous.
Okay, good word.
He received a phone call from Dr. Carol Cartwright. She had been his doctoral advisor and at the time was the president of Kent State University. She asked him if he was interested in a community college presidency. And at that point, he was working at Winston-Salem State University and was enjoying his role. So his initial thought was no. But he decided to read an article about Dr. Jerry Sue Thornton and was intrigued and agreed to interview for that presidency at Cuyahoga Community College's Metro campus, and the rest is history. With each of Dr. Johnson's presidencies, he brought great leadership skills. As as chancellor of Delgado Community College, Dr. Johnson had the opportunity to help not only a community college, but also a community rebuild after the devastating effects of Hurricane Katrina. At the Community College of Allegheny County in Pittsburgh, Dr. Johnson served as the first African-American president at that college and helped to move forward diversity initiatives. Dr. Johnson now joins us here at Cuyahoga Community College and is working to transform both the college and the community with his focus on not only access, but also diversity and completion. And we've seen historic moves in our student success numbers. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Alex Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Alex, you may know all these students, but I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves briefly to you. So why don't we pass the mic around, start with Warren there.
Warren Glenn, good morning, or good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Chandra Arthur, business faculty. Good afternoon, Dr. Johnson.
Good afternoon, Chandra.
Sheila Jones, coordinator, Jack Joseph and Mort Mandel, Humanities. Good afternoon, Dr. Johnson.
Good afternoon.
Shamira Spivey, good afternoon, Dr. Johnson.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Dr. Johnson. Jose Ramos Garcia.
Jose, good seeing you.
Good afternoon. I'm Jennifer Lopez, and you know me well.
Yes. I think I know all of you. I know all of you, in fact, yeah.
Hi, Dr. Johnson. Neeta Chandra, faculty in English at Metro.
Yes, Nita.
Good afternoon, Oksana Melnichenko. I'm a faculty member at the Eastern Campus Music Department.
Yes.
Good afternoon, Dr. Johnson. Robin Washington from Central Ohio Community College.
I knew there was a face I did not recognize. Welcome.
Thank you for
Very nice seeing you.
bringing me into the cohort.
Well, you are delighted. We are delighted.
Good afternoon, Dr. Johnson. James Gardner.
Good afternoon, Dr. Johnson. Magda Gomez.
Good afternoon, Dr. Johnson. Radia Douglas.
Good afternoon, Dr. Johnson. Thank you for joining us. Marjorie Morrison.
Good seeing you, Marjorie. Where's Vincent Fryland?
Oh, he's at practice.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Dr. Johnson. Retired Joanna Basic.
Good seeing you.
And returning as now adjunct faculty in the counseling department.
Good.
Good afternoon, Dr. Johnson. Terry Muff.
Good seeing you, Terry.
Thank you for coming today, Dr. Johnson. Tony Pickens, counseling faculty.
Very nice seeing you.
Good afternoon, Dr. Johnson. Elena Foster.
Elena.
Good afternoon, Dr. Johnson. Dr. Victoria Berry, thank you for
Nice
coming.
seeing you. I was wondering what you were doing here, Victoria.
Our distinguished alums.
Oh, yes.
Here to inspire the others.
Okay,
And of
well,
course,
great.
you know Dr. Marshall, who's
Oh,
our,
very well,
coordinator.
very well indeed.
So we really appreciate you being here.
Not a problem.
Dr. Johnson.
I'm excited. Thank you.
So I'm just going to ask you some questions and then give the students a chance to
Sure.
ask you some questions, if that's all right.
Warren, if you don't mind, could you pass this out because some of my responses to Dr. Boggs' questions allude to that. I think there's, let's see, on the bottom of that one, there's a clipped set of papers. You can give that back to me. Just the whole thing. Thank you. So while Warren does that, let me tell you, first of all, how delighted I am to be with you. Got a little, Kevin, got a little feedback. Can you, or is that just me? Okay, it's up to you though. However, but at any rate, I want to thank all of you so very much for allowing me to be with you this afternoon. This is an important opportunity, not only for your college, the college, but also not only for you, but also for the college as well. And I'm going to say this because I'm responding in part to Dr. Boggs' first question. It's an opportunity for the college to benefit from individuals who are both developed educationally and professionally. So when opportunities become available, we have a core of outstanding individuals to compete for them. The other thing that's important about your participation in this cohort is that you use what you learn here to continue developments and achievements in your current capacities, and that's very important indeed. I think you are, you are our youngest cohort. As I look around the room, so many of you have been at the institution, in some instances, for longer periods of time, but shorter periods of time as well. And it means then that you're getting a head start on your professional development in ways that other individuals may not have had the chance to do so. So while you continue your path of achievement here and excellence in your current jobs at Cuyahoga Community Colleges, there are going to be opportunities outside the institution that I encourage you to take advantage of as well. There are important positions that will be available at other institutions at the dean's level, the vice president's level, and at the president's level. And my hope is that your aspirations will take you to those heights. So once again, congratulations to all of you, and I look forward to monitoring and being part of your progress over the next 3 years.
That's great, Dr. Johnson. So actually what you just said reminded me of a quote that Don Cameron has. He does a lot of professional development around the country. And he said sometimes trustees will say, well, why should we be spending money to develop our people when they're just going to go get jobs at other colleges? And so Don said, well, what if we don't develop them and they stay?
Knowing, Don, that is an important reminder to us all that we have to be concerned not only about our own institutions, about community colleges generally as well. And I think if we really want to push the sector to new heights, we've got to have distinguished leaders in the future that help us do that. This is a critical period for community colleges, and I want to talk a little bit about that, particularly in response to some of Dr. Boggs' questions. So how are you doing, my friend?
Oh, I'm having fun here with these students.
In the midst of winter.
Yeah, the polar vortex.
The polar vortex.
It was 73 degrees when I left.
Oh, don't tell me that. 11 degrees here, but it's sunny, and that's a big deal for us.
Right. Well, I grew up close to here, so I'm used to it.
Sure.
So the students have read your bio, of course, and we heard Shamir give that wonderful introduction, but is there anything you'd like to say about your background, maybe any significant people or significant events that made a difference in your career?
Well, I passed out kind of an illustration of a leadership pathway that I have been thinking about, particularly over the last decade. And quite honestly, it's important to understand leadership theory and systems and to develop knowledge and understanding about how they're applied in a particular setting. But it's also important to understand that leadership can be organic as well, and that it can grow from within as you develop those competencies and skills gleaned from your interactions with different systems and theories. I believe that those tangible attributes of leadership, in addition to the competencies and skills, include your education, and I mean ongoing education, not just your formal education, but your ongoing education. It's a result of your experiences, both inside your professional roles and networks, but those things that you encounter throughout life. And then I think the other piece of it is exposure. Individuals whose attributes you'd very much like to emulate and apply in your own way. So it's the three elements of leadership, as I like to call it: education, exposure, and experience, along with the development of your social emotional skill set. That's critical. And one of the most important among the five is empathy. As you make decisions in leadership roles, you have to always think about how those decisions affect other individuals. You always have to take that into consideration. The other piece of that model is the other competencies and skills that I alluded to earlier. And then as you move forward, you use those competencies and skills within your initial leadership role, and they develop as you continue in that regard. The other piece of it is that there are natural attributes that we all have that we can apply within our leadership role and responsibilities as well. But there's not one natural attribute that may be greater than the others. They all kind of come together to create some type of alignment, and then ultimately your personalized approach to leadership. So when you ask me if there are people who inspired me along the way, oh, absolutely. Among those folk include a gentleman by the name of Chester Meisenheimer. Chester was my guidance counselor in the 12th grade. And I saw him 2 times. The first time was to develop my schedule, and the second time was to talk with him about going to college. And I never thought about going to college when I was in the 12th grade. But Chester told me that I needed to take the SAT at the time and see what the results might bring. Well, my SAT scores weren't that good in comparison to other students at the institution. But he did share with me that there would be colleges that would accept me, and they were called the historically black colleges and universities. I applied to 3 of those. I was accepted to all 3, and I chose Winston-Salem State University as my undergraduate institution. So Chester helped me understand the value of a college experience and introduced me to HBCUs. He was a white gentleman, but never did he realize that it would serve as the foundation for who I am both personally and professionally, and my belief that opportunities for educational excellence should be open to all. And that's part of the reason why I believe so strongly in equity and why it should be part of who we are as an institution. The other person is Dr. Marianne Winnick, one of my master's degrees professors who exemplified what it would be like to be an outstanding faculty member at the college level. And she inspired me to be a faculty member, but in order to do that, I needed to earn a PhD. So that was the other source of inspiration for the doctorate. She served as the source of inspiration, but Dr. Carol Cartwright made it happen. The former president at Kent State University and Bowling Green State University taught me so much about what it means to be a good doctoral student, but more importantly, what it meant to be a good faculty member, that you're able to communicate, that you're able to see change in terms of learning in students, that you are able to engage in research significant enough to have it published. And as a result of Dr. Cartwright's influence, I've been blessed to have a number of different publications and to be identified at one point in time as an outstanding faculty member, which serves as a foundation for my efforts now. And two other people, since I have been a college president, have been Dr. Walter Bumpus, who was my supervisor when I was chancellor at Delgado Community College, and also Dr. Jerry Sue Thornton, who demonstrated the importance of developing political and social networks that can be used to heighten an institution to no end. So you ask me who kind of helped me during my journey, those would be the ones in particular. But when I was younger, I was inspired by people like Louis Stokes because of his quiet determination, and Walter Cronkite, the manner in which he was demonstrated his love of this country and communicated to our nation during some very, very difficult times, including assassinations and wars and things of that sort. And then the last person would be, in that regard, would be a gentleman by the name of William Friday. I don't know if you've ever heard of him or not, Dr. Boggs, but he was the president at one time of the University of North Carolina system and brought that system through one of the most contentious desegregation suits imaginable because of the separation of higher education in that state. But these people give you, I think, impetus to develop not only professionally but personally. And my hope is that you see in me some of these attributes that I've talked about in these other people. So that's what that would be my response.
That's pretty interesting, Dr. Johnson. It really points out the effect that personal context can make, and all of us can do that. All of us can inspire other people.
Without a doubt, yes.
It's interesting you mentioned Walter Cronkite. I miss him. You know, it was a time when the news was real. It wasn't fake news.
Right. It was not fake news. Absolutely.
So Shamir mentioned that you had been a leader in Louisiana and in Pennsylvania, in addition to Ohio. So can you tell students a little bit about the culture in those states? Are the issues different? Are the challenges different for community college leaders in different states?
I think in general among community college leaders, there are probably 3 or 4 elements of their roles and responsibilities that are emphasized on a global way, in a global manner. First and foremost, student attainment, success in particular. And I don't know of any community college leader that is not grappling with that at this particular point in time. The other thing is the equity agenda. And we've got to do a better job of ensuring that individuals of color and students from economically disadvantaged backgrounds continue to achieve at the highest levels possible. And we emphasize that here at Cuyahoga Community College on a daily basis. Some of the differences, though, are with funding streams. Here at Tri-C, our funding streams include support from student tuition, state support, and also we have a local levy. And our community has been very generous in that regard. And just recently, we passed our first capital bond in the history of the institution by 68%.
Congratulations.
Yes, unheard of. Certainly that would not have been possible without the support of each and everybody in this room. And as I look around it, I can talk specifically about the particular contributions that they've made very, very easily indeed. So funding streams are different. In Louisiana, there was only one funding stream, and that was from the state. The students would pay their tuition. You take the tuition dollars, give it to the state, and they would return that money to you in the form of an annual budget. So that was Louisiana. In Pennsylvania, tuition was a revenue stream, the state was a revenue stream, and we got a small amount of money from the county, from Allegheny County, in support of capital improvements, and it's that way in other states like Texas as well. So the funding streams are different. The politics are different as well. Here, I work more closely with our local government officials than I do with state government officials. And I'm not suggesting to you that I don't at the state level, but my concentration is on local officials because of the levy. I have to work with them on a regular basis, ensure that we continue to get widespread support for our levy campaigns when they go out. So I know all the mayors. I'm a member of the Mayors and Managers Council. I'm very close with the mayor of Cleveland, as all of you know, very close, God bless you, very close with our county exec, Armand Butish, who appoints many of our trustee board members. There is a difference in terms of trustee as well. In Louisiana, we had a state board. I did not have a local trustee board. In Pittsburgh, I had a local board made up of 15 individuals, all appointed by the county government. In that state, politicians are allowed to serve on boards, which creates a whole new set of challenges for you. Here, they're not. Elected officials do not serve on the boards. As you know, the board here at Tri-C includes nine individuals, 6 are appointed by the county, and 3 are appointed by the governor. And sometimes we have a hard time getting those governor appointees on board because the governor appoints all of the state, all of the board members at all state institutions except for the ones that have levies like ours, where that responsibility is split. The other thing is, and I did talk about the board structures, so politically, and then when I was in, so here the focus is on the local politicians. When I was in Pittsburgh, it was all state, because there's the central state administration was very strong. So you spent a lot of time in Harrisburg working with those, with staff in the various leaders' offices and what have you. And then, of course, in Louisiana, they have such a strong centralized state system. Sometimes it creates a little havoc, but that's where you had to go in order to get support financially, particularly for your operating budget and for your capital. And there, I was before a committee in testimony almost every week in Louisiana, and the same thing in Pennsylvania. I don't miss that. Quite honestly, I'd rather have the relationship with our local politicians, and quite honestly, a lot of leaders need to engage more with their local politicians in the future. That's going to be important.
Were you at Delgado when Katrina hit?
I was at Delgado when Katrina hit, as Shamir alluded to, and it was a difficult proposition because the state took over control of the recovery in Louisiana, in New Orleans, and all of the other parishes. It made it really, really tough. And that control made it nearly impossible for us to recover some of our facilities. I kind of skirted the law a little bit. We went in, remediated some of our facilities, got a few buildings open. School closed in fall of 2005. We opened in spring of 2006 with 10,000 students. Before the storm, we had about 17,000. And the decision to move back so quickly was perhaps one of the most important ones I made.
Good. So, Dr. Johnson, one of the first discussion topics that we're going to do online has to do with the increasing racial tension in the country right now, and the fact that it has spilled over onto some campuses, University of Missouri, University of Virginia, Charlottesville had that white supremacist march. Right. Do you think this is going to be affecting community colleges? And a second part of that question would be, What can community colleges do to help improve racial relations in our communities?
Well, we have, we've had not a lot, but maybe a few instances of issues with civil discord, and quite honestly, I believe that throughout America it's going to continue. I think what we've done here is help people understand that hatred and bigotry are not consistent with our mission and our visions and values, and we make that statement all the time when these things occur. But I do believe that you need to provide ample opportunity for individuals to present opposing viewpoints on either side, and make sure that people understand that your responsibility as the leader is to protect their right to free speech. But at the same time, as a leader, you must disavow any speech or act that is hateful and disrespectful, and we've had to do that as well. On each one of our campuses, we have been very, very proactive about allowing opportunities for those things to happen. And we're fortunate indeed to have here among our stalwart supporters and people responsible for coordinating all of that, Magda Gomez, who I think has done a tremendous job since her time in office, kind of helping to construct a system that allows for that across the college. So I think it's going to continue, but I think community colleges need to be places where individuals can learn from different viewpoints, and presidents have to be stalwart in ensuring that we convey that we don't support behavior and actions that are hateful and disrespectful.
So isn't there also a safety consideration? What happened at University of Virginia, the white supremacists actually stirred up so much anti-feelings that there was violence there.
Right.
So what do leaders have to consider when you have somebody who wants to come and talk about?
Well, I think leaders have to be, based on experiences from other colleges and universities, they have to ensure that safety and security concerns are dealt with. So if a group that has a history of creating problems asked to come to the campus, we would probably not allow that to happen. Now, it might mean some legal entanglements and what have you, but we believe very strongly that our first priority is to protect the safety and the welfare of not only the individuals who attend this institution as students, but those who come each and every day and engage in the good work. So that's an important responsibility we have as well. It won't be easy, quite honestly, but I do believe that leaders have to demonstrate to the rest of the world and the rest of the community the importance of institutions of higher learning to promote this kind of civil discourse, and then ultimately to ensure that students learn from it.
Good responses,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Johnson. So,
Thank you.
The students have already talked a bit about the American Association of Community Colleges, and you are currently a board member. So what are the issues that AACC is dealing with right now?
Well, one of the, in addition to being a member, I'm sorry I'm not turning over to you guys, I apologize for that. In addition to being a member of the AACC board, and this is my second stint as a board member, I also chair the Committee on Government Advocacy. So our responsibility is develop ways that community college presidents can be more equipped to handle political engagement, both at the local level and the national level. So I believe one of the things that will be important for us as we move forward, particularly in this environment, is for community college presidents to be more politically astute, particularly as it relates to positioning community colleges as institutions who have an important role in promoting the welfare of this country by creating a more robust workforce. That's very important indeed. Since this administration has not developed a policy on higher education, but it has developed a policy on jobs and training. And we believe very, very strongly that community colleges have a vital role in that regard. So I think positioning community colleges as the premier providers of workforce training and development is a critical role of AACC. I think the other thing is the importance of focusing not only on success and completion, because you know that was a huge agenda for AACC over the last decade. And I think most community colleges understand how important that is and have taken the appropriate steps to ensure that their institutions reflect that. Access is going to be critical. As you know, since the economy has picked up, community college enrollments have gone down, and I'm not suggesting to you that that's the only reason why. But at the same time, the skills and competencies required for jobs have increased. So it's not like you're going to get out of high school and get a job that provides you with the kind of wage that would ultimately allow you to support your family. You still need some type of post-secondary training in order to access those jobs. We need to make certain that community colleges create structures whereby access is a big deal. 75% of the students that will be attending our institutions will be non-traditional students, not typical high school students that we've seen in the past, but 75% of those students will be non-traditional. Some of them will be graduates of our ABLE programs, including, Aspire. Some of them will be veterans who seek to develop their skills more fully and maybe get credit for the work that they did while they were in active military duty. There will be individuals who would like to develop their skills more fully, to take on more meaningful job opportunities at their current workplace or someplace else. So there's a whole group of individuals that have not had access to a college experience that need to have that access in the future. And our recruitment efforts, quite honestly, really need to be directed more so to that group of individuals. Now, we've talked about this, right? What did we have just 2 or 3 weeks ago before the holiday? What did we have? We had an access summit. So when we need to come together to talk about big ideas, what do? We have a summit. So we had our equity summit, and then a few weeks back, we had our access summit to identify specific populations and then do what, Jose? Determine how we need to go out and get those individuals to the institution so they can benefit from our power and value. So access, I think, is an important responsibility that we have. I think we have to become more entrepreneurial. We can't continue to depend on state support to fund our efforts to the extent that we have in the past. If you think I'm kidding you, all you have to do is take a look at Arizona, where for funding essentially for operations at community colleges has been wiped out. So we've got to become more entrepreneurial. And what does that mean? It means that we develop goods and services that can be sold, particularly in workforce training and development. And we can do a better job in that regard, particularly when we look at programs that have labor market value. I think we've done a good job in that regard. So if you take a look at our statistics, back in 2013, we graduated 900 individuals with viable certificates. This past year, it was 14,000. You remember? Okay, now some of that's duplicated. Some of those people have 1 or 2 or 3 types of certificates, but at least they're prepared to go out and get these meaningful job opportunities. And then the last piece, part and parcel of what this NAU cohort is all about, is about leadership development. I can tell you that I can count 5 presidents on my hand who have held on to their positions between 90 days and 1 year because they were not prepared to take on the challenging responsibilities associated with those jobs today. So leadership development is very important. That's why here at Tri-C, we've implemented a fairly robust succession plan. And Magda can tell you, and James as well, and Vincent if he was here, that we recognized that between, what was it, Magda, 6 months and a year and a half, there was no professional development opportunity for people here at the institution, and we recognized we needed to start early. So Jose was part of that as well. So we're implementing, for lack of a better term, a mentoring program for individuals from 6 months to to 2 years. 2 years, and then we have the Mandel Leadership programs that they will be eligible for. How many of y'all been in the Mandel program? How many in the Mandel program now this year? So you're doing double duty, right? Chandra and Shamira. So those things I think would probably be important to AACC, Dr. Boggs, but also important responsibilities for community colleges generally as well.
Thanks very much, Dr. Johnson. So you mentioned completion as one of the big issues, and the completion agenda certainly has been on the radar screen. We had President Obama challenging us, the Lumina Foundation, the Gates Foundation, and even AACC with its 21st century documents. So are you optimistic that we're going to meet the challenge that President Obama and the foundations gave us? And do you think with the current administration in D.C., is it going to be a change and less of an emphasis on completion?
Yeah, I don't, quite honestly, Dr. Boggs, I don't think we should allow the current administration to dictate a responsibility that we know we have as community colleges. And essentially, that's to make sure that more individuals who come to us graduate in a timely manner and in greater numbers. That goes without saying. And that's, that's been part of our DNA for a very, very long time now, almost a decade. And we've done a better job in measuring our output lately. We moved from 3.9, and I'm told we'll be at 18% at the end of the year. That's an important outcome. But we've also increased the number of graduates with the declining student base. So over the last couple of years, we've graduated more than 4,300 individuals. Well, we've awarded more than 4,300 degrees and certificates. And this upcoming year, it looks like we might be somewhere around 5,000. By 2023, we want to be somewhere between 6,000 and 6,500. So there are ways that we can continue to go about increasing the number of certificates and degrees, even if it's on a smaller student population. But I believe without access, there's no success. If you can't get individuals into your institutions, there's no way that you're going to continue to churn them out at the numbers that were expected by President Obama when he was in office. So to your point, our responsibility, particularly as it relates to access, equity, and completion, continues regardless of who's in administration. What we do have on our side is the fact that even though there is no particular policy related to higher education, there are policies and emphasis on jobs and training. And we need to continue to focus our attention on that. I think we were spoiled, quite honestly. I remember I was at an AACC meeting the day after the election of our current president, and it was a gloomy environment. And at that time, I chaired the Commission on Diversity and Inclusion, and rather than dealing with our agenda around what we needed to do to promote equity, we talked about what this election meant to not only community colleges in the country. And in my role as the committee chair, I had to help people understand that, hey, I think we'll be okay. If we continue to focus on our mission and continue to focus on ensuring that more individuals get trained and educated, that's critically important. And quite honestly, it's working out. We haven't allowed that to dampen our spirits, have we? We did, however, after the election, what happened, we got together as a community and we decided that we were going to work together to ensure that this did not have an effect on us, remember? Because we talked about that. And I sent out email messages that I normally do. So, but at any rate, I think we're going to be in good shape. I really do. And I think the AACC board in particular has an important role to ensure that the country understands the power and the value of a community college education and how beneficial it can be not only to the individual but to the country. And so we'll continue, I believe, to improve our student outcomes.
So a couple of good points you raised, Dr. Johnson. One is that the institutions need to be doing what's right regardless of what's going on in D.C. We need to be serving our communities and our students.
Right.
And the second one is really a reinforcement of what Dr. Roueche told us this morning in an interview we beamed him in. He said, you know, Republicans and Democrats both like community colleges, but for different reasons.
Right.
Republicans like us because we can help the economy, get people trained for jobs, and Democrats love us for the social, you know, helping people to better themselves. So what you're playing at AACC right now is into the Republican belief that we are there to help the economy and help people get jobs. So,
absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So that's great.
Thank
so
you.
I have one more question to ask, and then I'm going to ask the students to ask you some questions or give them a chance, and I guess we're going to be passing a mic around. So students, start thinking of questions you'd like to ask Dr. Johnson. So you've already mentioned, Dr. Johnson, some of the most important issues, but are there some other issues out there that that community college leaders need to be concerned about today?
Well, I think the ones that I've already mentioned, the being more politically savvy, for example, particularly at the local level, and being able to promote the priorities of your institutions are critically important. Community college leaders have a more outward role now than they've had in the past. You don't neglect what's going on at the institution, but what you have to do is make sure that you build a robust and a team of individuals to support all of the efforts that are necessary to promote the advancement of the institution. But community college presidents really need to be out and about, discerning the needs of their community and then coming back and making provisions to ensure that they're done. The other thing I believe critical to community college development is the notion of funding. And what does that mean? So in our state, how many of you understand our funding model? You understand how it works, right? You understand that we don't get paid for bodies, we get paid for outcomes. So because of our outcomes, over the course of the last 3 years, we've moved from about 14% of the allocation for all of community colleges to 16.5%. Our goal was to be at 16% by 2020. We're already at 16.5% because of the great effort of individuals around the institution. But funding will continue to be a major roadblock for many institutions unless they engage in some type of entrepreneurial effort. We already have smaller community colleges in the state in woeful financial difficulty because of the decreased funding and the decreased outcomes at their institutions. I don't expect any of them to close, but there will be a significant diminution in the number of programs that they're able to offer. The other thing that's going to be critical as we move forward is using technology to promote both not only administrative advancements, but also instructional delivery as well. We have 12,000 of our students take one or more courses online. That ranks us among the top 25 or 30 in the nation. I was surprised to read that list because our participation in online learning is much higher than some four-year and highly prized private institutions. We're going to have to do more of that. But in order to do that in a productive manner, we have to create a formal system here at the college in order to do that, so that we can award more degrees and certificates. That's a delicate situation here at the institution at this particular point in time. So we're working very closely with the Faculty Senate and also with the AAUP Executive Committee to ensure that we do that right. Chandra, as you know, faculty engagement and engagement generally is an important responsibility that we have. And quite honestly, we would not be where we are if it weren't for the Labor Management Council from the AAUP, the Joint Faculty Senate Council, or the combined President's Council. So that's important. So I would suggest that those things, in addition to some things that I've already talked about, would be important as we move forward.
Great. Thanks, Dr. Johnson. So students, now's your chance to ask some questions of the President. Agda, so can we get the microphone over?
Dr. Johnson, you spoke earlier about our most recent success with the levy for our capital bond campaign.
Yes.
And the fact that we were able to pass it 68%. Can you speak to what it is you believe is the reason we received overwhelming support from our community, and that for some people, including myself, when we were out and about, we just heard a lot of positive things from people, and even on the phones, absolutely no questions asked, I'm definitely going to vote for that. Why do you think people had that response and reaction to voting for this levy?
Well, first and foremost, I would be remiss if I did not recognize the influence that that all of you had on the levy. We had 1,100 volunteers, right, Radia, who canvassed neighborhoods, passing out literature, participated in phone banks, and doing all of those things necessary to ensure that individuals were familiar with the importance of the construction bond and what it would mean to the future of the institution and the future of the community. So that was critical. We raised over $1.2 million. So there was a lot of support from our partners out there who believe very, very strongly in the institution. And as you know, we can't use public dollars for a levy. So $1.2 million, that's a big deal. I will tell you that 400,000 of that $1.2 million came from where? Came from you guys. Came from you guys. So it was a big deal. It's a big deal. I think the transparency that we have coveted, particularly over the last 5 or 6 years, was instrumental. We used to hide our graduation rate. We didn't talk very much about our graduation numbers. We didn't talk about our student outcomes. We didn't talk about students generally as part of our effort to help people understand understand the institution. And we've done a lot more of that, as you know. Our outcomes have been good. When you talk about our graduation numbers, our graduation rates, more individuals getting into the workforce, decreasing that skills gap to an extent is still fairly deep, but at least we've made a dent in it. I think those are the kinds of things that really made a difference, Magda. And quite honestly, I was surprised at the 68%. I was at the watch party. How many of you were at the watch party? None of y'all went to, oh, okay, Radia was there, okay. So, as Radia, as you recall, I ought to have you tell the story. But, come on, so don't give Radia a hard time. So as you know, when the absentee ballots were reported, we were at 63.7%. I couldn't believe it, because at our last levy, we asked for 0.9, and we started out at 53%. I said, there's got to be a problem here. Well, wouldn't you know it, the Board of Elections had a glitch in their computer system. And you know what I thought? Right, Jennifer? You mean to tell me that these absentee ballots might be tainted in some way? But we kind of suffered through about an hour and a half of angst and then the election returns actually came in. So we started out at 63.7 and wound up at 68, which was extraordinary. And I think it's because of what I talked about before, Magda. But the most important thing about, what we learned from this election, that the responsibility for the campaigns it has to be local. It has to be in the hands of campuses. And the campus presidents, their leadership teams, and all of their colleagues did such a tremendous, tremendous job at the local level. And that's what made the difference. We carried 57 out of 59 municipalities. We even got Parma. With 57 out of 59. And it was amazing. And in one municipality, the vote was 50-50, 13-13, right? It was small, Walton Hills, I believe, but amazing, I think, outcome. And so we've got a big levy coming up in 19, and so we've got to get started for that as well.
Never ends, right?
Yeah, yeah.
James, I think you're next. Oh,
okay.
Let's
Warren?
go with Warren.
Yeah.
Good afternoon again, Dr. Johnson.
You got it.
You had mentioned earlier in regards to campus presidents, some campus presidents not necessarily being prepared when they take the position.
Not our campus president.
Right, not ours. Definitely not ours.
I would use the term college presidents generally, yes.
Of course. But could you tell us what are 3 areas that any new college president should focus on during their first 90 days?
Okay. So let me just share with you, Warren, that the first 90 days are important, but all of the time leading up to that is more important. I talked about those 3 attributes: your experience, your exposure, and your education. Those are things that you really, really need to depend on. You need to identify those critical incidents that help you form your ideas about not only your education and development, but also your leadership development. I don't think there's anything serendipitous about developing your leadership skill. It takes a lot of hard work, and a lot of that is before you take on that responsibility. A lot of the things that you take with you to your initial appointment, you learn through that process. But the things that I would talk specific, the things that are important are, first of all, developing your coalition, engaging individuals at the institution, communicating with them, meeting with them, getting their advice and counsel and direction on the kinds of things that need to be done to advance the institution. You've got to create your coalition. That's critically important. The other thing that's critical is that you continue to convey over and over and over again your vision and strategic priorities for the institution. How many of you were here when I arrived? How many strategic priorities did we have? 6. We had 6. And everybody knew them by heart. It was around the student experience. It was about affordability. It was about community engagement. It was about the brand of the institution and its image. It was about, what were they? Okay, I'm missing some. But at the core of those strategic priorities was what? At the core. All these strategic priorities led to what? Student success and completion. You've seen that diagram, right? So those strategic priorities, and then what are the things you need to do in each area to accomplish those? So some type of strategic focus, like a plan, and then for each one of those, some type of tactical plan. So we did that. Now we have a combined tactical plan, but a strategic plan has to have a tactical plan. And then I think the other thing is come to grips with your social and emotional skill set. Remember I talked about that. There are 5 specific attributes: self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, social skills, and I think there's one other that escapes me right now, but empathy is one of the most important attributes that you can learn. The other thing is, don't become big-headed about the role. I will tell you this because the reason some people fail is that they focus so much on positional power that they forget about relational power. And that's what you have to do. You have to develop yourself. Before it, But then as you get into the job, you engage folks. So when you need to get people on board, it's not about the position, it's about persuasion, it's about the relational attributes that you have, and that's what you use. Now later on, after you build some cachet, there may be times when you have to use positional power, but not at the expense of relational power. Never at the expense of relational power. And the only way that Bill Friday was able to desegregate the North Carolina system was through relational power. He was up against a state that had a history of just over discrimination. And here he was in the midst of a desegregation lawsuit. And he had to use his skill and his power in order to develop that consent agreement. That North Carolina was among the first states that had a consent decree. And they're one of the best states for higher education imaginable. They just passed, you think we just passed a nice bond, they just passed a $6 billion bond, construction bond. This is the second one in 15 years that will continue to provide support for all institutions, and most notably historically Black colleges and universities. Where I went to school, Winston-Salem State, we had about 1,300. When I worked there, we were at 2,300. That school is now at 9,000 and has PhD programs. So those are the things, you have to get ready for that. So people call me sometimes, they say, Dr. Johnson, I got this particular situation. What should I do about it? I say, well, it's hard for me to judge. Give me the particulars and I give them advice and what have you. But more new presidents, and this is the last piece, ought to have a coach. They ought to have a coach. Goes without saying. I still have a coach. Carol Cartwright is my coach. I call her when I find myself in a position where I'm struggling with an answer. I've come full circle, so I pretty much have answers to about everything. Not being pretentious, but that's what happens when you have experience. But every new president ought to have a coach. And guess what? The Board of Trustees ought to be involved in that coaching experience with them.
Good points, Alex.
Yeah.
Are there some things that the president shouldn't do in the first 90 days?
Well, I was going to say don't have an inauguration because that seems to be getting a lot of people in trouble, boy. What they shouldn't do is not have any time elapse throughout their day where they don't spend some time with somebody either inside the institution or outside the institution, talking about your vision and what your hope and aspirations for the institution.
Probably don't remodel your office, right?
Don't remodel your office. Yeah.
So I think James is next here.
Hey, Dr. Johnson.
Yeah.
Once again, thanks for the opportunity.
No problem.
My question is, Dr. Terry O'Banion led a rather spirited lecture yesterday about rogue trustees. Have you ever experienced a rogue trustee, and how did you handle that situation?
Not here. We have a great board of trustees here, headed by my good friend Victor Ruiz, who is president and CEO of Esperanza. He's doing an outstanding job, and the other 8 trustees are tremendous as well. So we're fortunate. We're fortunate indeed to have a great trustee board here. But I have had situations whereby one trustee has kind of dictate the path of the trustee board. I wouldn't call them rogue trustees, but sometimes that voice is so loud that other trustees are not willing to speak out. I think the important thing is when you have a trustee that's out of sync with the rest of the board and the direction that the president has for the institution that has been approved and endorsed by the board, the trustees need to speak up. And the president needs to nudge the chair and the executive committee occasionally to help them understand their role and responsibility in that regard. A lot of that can be overcome when the board has a program. When the board has a program, they deal primarily with policy and governance, and they don't get involved in the day-to-day operation of the institution. That's where board board president relationships can often go awry. But have I had difficult situations? Oh yes, I can tell you I have. Not here, but when I was at the Community College of Allegheny County. Please be reminded, we have 15 board members, all appointed by a county exec, and I had 3 politicians on that board. 3 politicians, a state senator, a local county councilman, and there was one other, I forgot what he did, but yeah. So I had to spend a lot of time individual with board members, talking about our aims and objectives, helping them develop firsthand understanding and knowledge of the direction of the institution, so when it became necessary, they could speak up on our behalf. So yeah, but I've not had the kind of role trustee that Terry talked about, but I do know presidents who have, and it's a difficult proposition, indeed. But and a lot of that happens when you have, wouldn't you agree that when you have an elected board, that's more prone to happen than when you have a board that's selected by
I think that's probably true.
Yeah, yeah. Not all the time, but most time that's when it happens.
Any other questions, students? Robin?
Dr. Johnson, having worked in community colleges in both Pennsylvania, Maryland, and now here in Ohio, it's been really interesting to see how many of the college leaderships have been dealing with a couple of different factors involving enrollment, whether the competition from for-profit institutions coming in, that was very big in Maryland, or whether you're looking at the reality of some community college taking on bachelor's programs, others choosing not, others choosing to take on the standard mission of technical college. Where do you see, as future college leaders, where do you see we need to go with being able to make sure our community colleges stay strong in the overarching higher education model?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think we're doing a better job of promoting the mission. If you think about higher education as a sector, there are no other institutions that have our unique mission, not only around access, but also around workforce training and development, with certificates and degrees being an important outcome. There are no other institutions that have that role. The only ones I can think of are probably the 1860 or 70 institutions. What do you call those? The land grant institutions, whose responsibility it is to create kind of a technical workforce. But so we have to continue to promote that and help people understand how they can benefit from coming to us. So that's why among our strategic priorities, we continue to promote brand marketing and outreach. That's really important indeed. And I think the other piece is ensuring that everyone understands that their responsibility is to promote their institution. Just as we did during the levy, it's also important to promote what we do, our outcomes, and how we are positioned, uniquely positioned, to promote the economic well-being of our country. If you think about us, for example, when I arrived, we graduated 2,900 students on a very large student base. This past year, 4,300, next year, possibly 5,000. Getting that out there and talking to people about these tremendous outcomes continues to be very, very important indeed. So where were you in Pennsylvania?
Bucks County, I'm Dr. Links.
Okay, all right, yes, yeah, Jim Links. He's, how long have you been here in Ohio?
8 months.
A short period of time. So you came here from Bucks or Maryland?
No, I came from Maryland. I was at Baltimore City
You at Baltimore City?
during
Okay.
the controversy, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah. We won't get into that.
Oh,
talk
no.
about rogue board members, yeah.
Yes.
You got some stories that you can share,
I do.
right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I know. It's you can learn from
Good
every
lessons
experience.
learned. Yeah.
Yes, you can
Yes.
learn from every experience. Absolutely.
Any other questions, students? Well, Dr. Johnson, it's been great
thank you.
having you
Thank
here
you.
with us. Can you give some words of advice to our doctoral students before we let you go?
Well, I don't have to give them words of advice in terms of how they're going to approach their education and development. They've got some competition. I mean, they've got a legacy, for lack of not a legacy, but the prior cohort, as you know, essentially all of them graduated, right? Am I right? And they're working on completing.
Great.
So do I need to tell y'all anything else? Okay. Well, thank you so much, and congratulations again. Thank you. Thank you very much. Kevin,
Thanks,
thank you. But thank you so much.